Hi there, and you're watching Dukascopy Debate. Well, were you bullish or bearish at the beginning of the year for the global economy? The IMF has slashed its predictions for the world's economy, but remains quite bullish for Japan. Now, on this topic today, I am joined by Mr. Positive in the Bulls corner, John Hancock, and in our Bears corner, we have David Smith, our very own Geneva Business Insider. Now, with the US Consumer Confidence Report, things were looking up a little bit. Could we see, much more recovery in the US? Is this a glimmer of hope or just a false dawn? Now, John, I'll let you start. What do you think?
Good question. Look, things are looking better in the United States, despite all the pessimism. And it's not just in the consumer confidence numbers, although that has to be a positive sign. There's tentative revival in the housing market, and this is a trend that's been continuing for several months now. There's this quite profound change that's going on in the energy sector, where the United States is now a net exporter of natural gas. Fracking is creating the potential of America not only emerging as self-sufficient in energy, but the world's largest energy producer. We're seeing manufacturing being repatriated to the United States. Is this going to create the boom times of the 1950s and 60s? I wouldn't go that far, but I think there's something quite profound that's happening in the US economy that's worth taking note of. Meanwhile, Japan is at least acting aggressively and dramatically. There is signs in Africa of a sustained commodity led boom. There's reason for optimism in almost all parts of the world except for Europe.
Except for poor, struggling Europe. That's pretty much like the Titanic. What are you thinking?
Well, I think the issues in the United States still are pretty challenging. I mean, if we talk about a housing recovery, I mean, what you're actually seeing is I think, a false recovery. You're seeing house prices go up in tourist destinations and exclusive residential areas. The reason for that is principally not because there's any genuine revival in the people coming in at the bottom end of being first-time buyers, but because of major corporations, hedge funds and private equity funds coming in and pumping very large amounts of money into the sector. So there is at the moment a certain amount of peaking on this, and what always happens in any kind of a situation is Mr. Bernanke wants to blow another bubble, and this bubble is actually benefiting his mates, the hedge funds and the private equity funds. But they're in the process of selling out, and no doubt they will dump this inflated market onto some dumb pension fund manager down the road who's no idea what he's doing and who earns a 50th of what the people are actually doing at the top end of the chain, who get out at the right time. So I think that's housing. Fracking, for me, I think is the next false dawn, because essentially what people do not take into account is the technologies of what fracking is all about. It's fracking difficult to understand. So I think it's another one of these, America is going to be independent on this. It's just a load of fracking nonsense.
So speaking of a load of fracking nonsenses and building bubbles and, false dawns, if we're looking at the booming stock markets, now, are you thinking it is pretty much disconnected with the real economy, with all the quantitative easing going on and US monetary policy? Now, there's a lot of, at the moment, some hedge fund giants who are expressing concern about the US monetary policy, and they are predicting a bubble happening, a bubble bursting in the stock markets very soon. What are you thinking?
Look, I think you're asking a good question,
yeah.
And it's one that we read about in the financial press day after day. And I think it's because partly the financial press all took Economics 101, and they at least are literate at that level. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, you loosen money, you do what Bernanke's doing or the Bank of England is doing, and you automatically increase the money supply. And when you increase the money supply, it will have inflationary effects. It will create bubbles. There's the potential stock market bubble. There's the commodity bubble we seem to have gone through. There may be a reflating housing bubble. But, that's Economics 101. It's not Economics 102. I mean, I think you could make a case that you're not inflating the money supply. That in fact, the measure of this is inflation. We don't have it. And in a lot of these markets, what our real problem is deflation. So in that sense, I think what Bernanke is trying to do, and I think this is a debatable question whether he's doing it successfully or not, is trying to restore some sense of confidence, almost a psychological exercise in building confidence that this market, this economy will recover, that this too shall pass. Has he been successful up to that point? No, but the consumer confidence figures are significant in that respect. So I think, this debate that we're in another bubble, that this is just a repetition of what happened pre-2008 isn't true. In fact, what's really going on is we almost have irrational pessimism right now. I mean, the news has been grim for so long that we can't imagine a world that's actually going to restore itself and recover. I think we're going to see that happening.
Irrational pessimism? There's just too many bears out there, too many people who are pessimistic, but we do have reason to be.
I think what you're saying is quite right. I mean, so far Bernanke has pumped a huge amount of money into the system, basically to counter the deflationary effect and the fact that people are not spending. But people don't spend because they don't have money. And so we're seeing a huge distortion which is being created by pumping money into a system which can only go into certain places. And it's very easy for it to go into the stock market or the bond markets and pump them up, and Bernanke knows that full well. But I mean, basically bubbles are a wonderful opportunity to redistribute wealth big time. If we look at the bond markets in the US, the yields have never been lower, the prices have never been higher in the entire history of the United States. If you look at the stock market, where the fundamentals are, we agree, very substantially non-existent, there is no correlation between the stock market value and the performance of the economy. What there is a simple representation of, if I pump enough money in, the wealth goes to my rich friends, and I, Mr. Bernanke, like that fine.
Arrogance, globalization, arrogance, that's pretty much, I think, a problem we have been seeing with the economy, with the crash, with everything. But it's interesting, and it's a very good point, David. On that note, I'm just going to ask you guys one question pretty quickly, short answer. Start with you. In 5 years' time, in terms of growth, do you think, where is the Eurozone going to be, first of all, in terms of, is it going to keep it sinking to the bottom of the ocean? Where is it going to be? So what's your 5-year prediction for the global economy?
Boy, that's a really difficult question. I think trying to make the really large elements of it, I think by then the US economy will have gone through a collapse. I think that's pretty sure. They've put it off for 5 years now. Since 2008, it's 5 years, they've addressed none of the issues. I think Europe will not be able to sustain itself because there will be such civil unrest that it will break apart. If I had to bet which country fell apart first, I would probably put my money on Japan. Okay,
so be an economic sidekick. Do you agree that Japan will be the first country to collapse? What's your 5-year global prediction?
If we're going to start with Europe, I think Europe has problems. I think it's demographically challenged. I think it's politically challenged. I don't think the European project is working out the way people thought it would. I think it's structurally challenged. My personal view is that Europe will continue to be a very attractive place for tourists. They will have great infrastructure. It will be the museum of the world, but the rest of the world's going to pass it by.
But how can we have great infrastructure if money keeps going?
It's got a lot of sunk wealth. I mean, they're not going to starve. No. You look around Geneva, people still want to live here. This is a place where people want to retire. This is a place where people want to come on their vacations. It's got all that going for it. But as a dynamic economic leader, a locomotive of the global economy, no, not in the foreseeable future.
So that's Europe in general?
No, and on the global economy, I'm quite optimistic. I think it will pass Europe by.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, David. Well, viewers, thank you again for watching another very special Dukascopy debate, and it will be very interesting to see who will be the leaders of the global economy in 5 years' time. For now, have a great day.